I may have been given a little too much power, and that's okay, because we're going to be talking about Generation 2 Bionicle, but I want to talk about one thing specifically, and hold on, before you tune out of this video, you're going to see a custom part, sort of. We'll get to that. You see, Generation 2 Bionicle, I've talked about the consistency issues with it, and one of my major gripes, even though I'm not like a huge fan of the copious amounts of transparent colors, it would have at least been nice to have gotten a full set of 6 with the bones specifically, right? We do have shells that thankfully appear in all 6 colors, but Gali and Kopaka both use the trans light blue bone pieces. And that's really unfortunate because at the very least, I would have liked to have seen them at least recolor it once in one set somewhere, but they didn't. And so I figured if Lego's not going to do it, I'll do it myself. So this is where I'm at right now. And this is a work in progress. I just want to say it's not actually quite as dark as I would like it to be. And I'm going to continue to work on that. But I'll talk about how I made this in a second because these are different colors, as you can tell. Now, this is a real Lego piece. This is technically a real Lego piece, too. It's not even a resin cast. It is a dyed piece. And here's the thing. I wasn't expecting this to work. Not because I didn't expect dyeing it to work. I have dyed plenty of Bionicle pieces in the past, but to mixed results. However, today I did something a bit different from my usual process. You see, normally I use heat, ceramic stovetop, for example, something that does not have an exposed flame because, unfortunately, I also use acetone. And acetone, while useful, is very dangerous around an open flame, obviously. It is very flammable. And so I wanted to try and come up with a different process that could work. It's not going to work for everything, but the fact that it worked for this was unexpected. And I tried this first with a non-Lego piece. It was a knockoff that I ended up actually buying from Zion Tyros maybe a year or more ago at this point, the trans light blue CCBS ribcage piece from the Skull Villains. Now you say to me, but that is a real piece. Yes. But I wanted to test it on a cheaper version first, a knockoff version. Thankfully, it's not a terribly expensive piece to get your hands on, not at all, and it's a fairly common one at that. But if it was going to be damaged, I'd much rather it be a piece that cost me 25 cents than a piece that cost me 50 or 75 cents, right? Because that price adds up over time. But now that I know that it works, I'm much more confident trying with real Lego pieces. See, here's the thing. I did not use heat. I did use hot water, but by hot water I mean out of the tap. I didn't warm it up. My water heater did. 120-ish degrees, I think 118 is what I measured, but whatever, close enough. That was enough. Here's the thing. So I use acetone, and typically when I do it in my normal process over a stovetop, I do about 1/3 acetone to 2/3 everything else. The dye, which I'll talk about in a minute, and water specifically. In this case, however, I went a bit lighter on the acetone, maybe 20 to 25%, give or take, but it was kind of eyeballing it in a measuring cup, so I can't tell you the exact number, roughly 20%. The dye that I used, not this color, this is the graphite, I'm using blue. It's in the other room right now because, again, this is a work in progress. I have more work to do, but this, for all intents and purposes, is the correct one. Rit Dye More, and for blue here, I used Sapphire Blue. And I literally just shook it up, put enough into the solution to make it where it wasn't transparent anymore. It was opaque, right? And then I topped it off with that tap hot water. That was enough. And I'm shocked. Now, it did take its time, sure. A piece of this color maybe took 2 to 3 minutes, whereas the bootleg piece took probably a minute at most. However, this is where the caveats come in. And the reason I won't be doing bootlegs, at least not of that piece, acetone's a little weird. It's kind of unpredictable, notoriously so, in fact, and something that it can do I call oxidation. I don't know if that's technically true, but what it ends up doing is leaving a pretty much unremovable white film on the surface of plastic sometimes. And I say that because I don't know what causes it. From the research I've done, nobody really knows what causes it, and it does not happen 100% of the time. However, when it does happen, you do notice. Now, on a transparent piece, that's not always a bad thing. It can give you a frosted aesthetic, which that could be cool too, but it's not what I wanted here. Of course, it did happen. I tested it on 2 pieces. Both of them did end up frosting, for what it's worth. They're totally usable pieces. But, thankfully, The Lego bone pieces that I tried did not oxidize. None of them. I tried 4 so far because I have about 1 billion of this piece specifically. And I intend to go in there and actually further darken it, because here's the thing. This is pretty thin. This is not thin. This should be, in theory, a bit darker than this. In practice, if it comes out to being around the same color, I'm happy. And in comparison to trans purple, well, you can see a difference here as well. I do want to make note that the ball sockets work great, work absolutely fantastic. Nothing has changed here. They feel about how they should, about the same. I can click it into here just fine, and there's a good amount of friction, as you would expect. Because we're not using a lot of acetone, by far not enough to damage the piece, at least not in the short term. Same thing with this ball joint in the middle as well, and of course, the ball joint at the end. The one thing I wanted to give you, if you plan on trying this yourself, first of all, outdoors, probably best, ventilation. Acetone is a very sneaky chemical. It's not great to breathe in. But also, if you want to try this yourself, just note, you could run into some problems, of course. At the end of the day, thankfully, most of the stuff we're using here is generally safe, but again, with the acetone, because of flammability issues, preferably do it in cold, preferably do it in an open air area outdoors. As I mentioned, it's winter here, so it's a perfect time for it. And yeah, it worked out well enough for me, so I'm pretty happy with it. So what are my plans then? Why would I even go out of my way to make these parts? Well, again, I've done this before in the past, and I've been pretty happy with the results, although in the past I've usually done it with heat, as mentioned. What I plan on doing, I'm going to make my own Bionicle. For real. Sort of. This is going to be a Generation 2 Bionicle, of course, and it's going to be a water skull villain. Now, I'm not casting any parts for this. I'm going to rely solely on dyeing pieces. So, that works. Sow, is that what I said? So, that works. Here's what it's going to look like. At least here's the idea. It's going to be a hybrid of 2 builds that I have made in the past. This one here, the original Skull Shaman that I designed, although this is the first version of it, it's not correct anymore. I've done some improvements to this build. Now, you can see, first of all, he doesn't have the ribcage piece on him. That's true. Not on his torso, but he does have it on his newer version of weapon. Because I call him the Skull Shaman, I wanted to give him some kind of staff weapon. You know, a lot of shaman type characters are often depicted as like hunched over with a big old walking cane and a flag or some random, you know, whatever. Maybe that's just what I picture. But the idea here in this case is that it is going to have the ribcage on the flag, on that weapon. And that's also where the corrupt mask is going to be. How am I going to handle the corrupt mask? That one is going to be tough. Resin casting is fun. Resin casting Legos Gold, not as fun. And I've talked about this with Zion Tyrus as well yesterday. We were chatting just generally about metallic colors and all of this, really. But rather than that, what I think I want to try doing, because I feel like it's kind of more fun, it's in my wheelhouse, sure, and I can resin cast pieces, that's fine, but also because I'm doing this as sort of like an explicit dye job only, no resin casts, what if I take a gold galley mask and dye just the top of it dark blue? I want to see how that comes out, and I have about 1 billion of them anyway, so why not test it? Metallic ABS from Lego, and transparent ABS from, or I guess it's technically not ABS, but close enough. Transparent colors from Lego typically take dyes really well. Polypropylene's another story, and that's for later, but I could make the fists in gunmetal. I could make that Skull Basher mask in gunmetal, as I plan on doing, and maybe even the feet as well. It's not to say that they have to be gunmetal, by no means, but then using that sort of cloth skull villain armor add-on piece, fur, whatever you want to call it, towards the torso there, looks really good for a protector size character, and that's exactly what I want to do. But let me show you the second character I'm taking inspiration from. Another one of mine, which you can actually find here on YouTube. It's an older video, so I apologize if there's any quality issues with it. But the Skull Harbinger, this one here, I think I titled the video like Kid Icarus or something. Silly. Go ahead and check it out after this one. I'll probably link it as well. That said, though, the actual function for this is pretty cool because it has nothing to do with battle. It does not move its arms or shoot an arrow or anything. Rather, it's the wings. And this is a function that I've talked about in the past in that video. I've used this function on some other builds as well. It's a lovely and compact function that's fairly easy to understand. So that's kind of the idea right now. A water skull villain. This is going to be fun. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe because it does help out the channel, helps out the algorithm, and it makes sure that YouTube recommends more of my content, not only to you, but to more people. That way I can be the biggest YouTuber. No, I'm joking. But on top of that, you can also join the conversation in the comments or check out the Discord, Instagram, or Patreon if you want to support the channel and get perks. All that linked in the description. And yeah, once I have more dying content, that's going to sound great out of context, you'll find another video. Take care.